Immigration and border security, a front line in the race for the White House. Big stakes, but also big money and big questions, with the same private contractors from Iraq now building a high-tech Fortress America.
On the U.S.-Mexico border, I'm Avi Lewis, and this is Frontline USA. Ask a presidential hopeful about immigration these days, and the first words you're likely to hear are, "First, we must secure the border." Secure the border. It's a comforting mantra that takes on a very different ring when you're actually on the border, looking at the unmanned drones and armored vehicles and other symbols of a militarized zone. Borders are big business these days. The Bush administration boasts of 302 miles of border fence built, of hiring 9,000 new border guards, doubling the number since 2001. But the real financial frontier is border technology, like Boeing's virtual fence, mile after mile of surveillance towers, bristling with security technologies. Final price tag, $2.5 billion. And Boeing's not the only contractor cashing in. In many ways, the war in Iraq is coming home, with some of the best-known brand names in modern warfare rushing to position themselves in this lucrative new market. So, what role should private contractors play in the life and death world of border security? That's the question for this week's Frontline Focus.
I want to have a secure border, and that means let's look more at technology, more at personnel.
We've got to restore trust in government and secure our borders.
Surveillance, deploying effective technology, that's going to be the better approach.
Technology to secure the U.S.-Mexico border. It's one of the only policies of the election season that enjoys support from both parties. And so the 2,000-mile border with Mexico looks like the future to big companies with contracts in their eyes. One of the first to get there was Boeing, America's second-largest defense contractor, with Project 28, a so-called virtual fence to police 28 miles of border near Tucson, Arizona, a high-traffic area for migrants. To see what it looks like at ground level, we visited Arivaca, a small community where a string of Boeing surveillance towers runs right through residential areas. Tom Kay's property hugs the border. He claims that hundreds of migrant workers pass through his land every day.
You know, whatever they can do is good, and what they're doing is good. These towers, these cameras, they're helping a lot, and if they help a lot, I like them. They don't hurt anything.
But for many in this community, the virtual fence is not so benign.
I think it's an over-expenditure for no purpose other than just a political purpose of rewarding Boeing Corporation for its contributions to the Republican Party. I don't find anything that to be realistic that could stop the inflow, except in economic changes on both sides of the border, I suspect.
There is also an even more basic question. Do the towers actually work?
I've spoken directly to the Border Patrol agents who are involved in operating that system over the last few months and who have seen it produce actual results in terms of identifying and allowing the apprehension of people who are illegally smuggling across the border.
But according to the Government Accountability Office, the software is flawed and sensors are tricked by rain and other environmental factors. In other words, the towers, for all their futuristic sensors, can't tell the difference between coyotes, the human smugglers, and coyotes, the desert animals. Even the border crossers themselves are unimpressed.
It's not very efficient, the equipment. Last night we tried to go on top of a hill and signal help, but nobody stopped. No helicopter stops or anything. They didn't even realize that we were there. I think the equipment is just there to scare people. They didn't search very well for us anyway.
We met Oscar and his friend when we made the rounds with Isla Abernathy, a volunteer with Samaritan Patrols, a group that looks for migrants in the desert and brings them food and water. Isla knows the drill all too well. If Oscar gets picked up, he won't be processed by private contractors. Border Patrol is one thing still done by federal government employees, but transporting migrants, that is another business opportunity.
Wackenhut is a contract service to transport migrants who've been picked up in the field by Border Patrol.
I will do that. And what's your name?
My name?
Yeah.
My name is not important.
Oh, okay. First, I don't think the screening is good. I think you're going to get people who have been bounced out of law enforcement and even Border Patrol from other areas. They don't receive even as much orientation as Border Patrol people do.
Undocumented workers picked up by Border Patrol used to be sent back to Mexico quickly. But recently, a new federal policy is being tested called Operation Streamline. Border crossers without papers are now arrested and put in jail while awaiting trial on mostly minor charges. The administration insists that the approach is a deterrent and that it's working. But with thousands more people now being jailed for up to 6 months, it's providing a wave of new inputs to yet another growing industry: private prisons for immigrants.
This is the entrance to Corrections Corporation of America's Eloy Detention Center.
The Eloy Detention Center is run by the Corrections Corporation of America, the country's largest operator of private prisons. Hit by a string of scandals from poor prisoner treatment to riots and escapes, by the year 2000 the company's stock price was at an all-time low. Then came the boom in detaining immigrants, now the fastest growing prison population in America. Since 2002, CCA's stock price has more than quadrupled.
Well, these are contracts, right? And the raw material for your industry is a human being in a cell. So it gets down to like, what is this prisoner worth to you for every day that they spend in this cell? Per diem rates range between $50, $60 a person per day, which is quite a lot of money.
CCA declined the opportunity to talk to us or give us access to the Eloy facility.
Here. Is there any way for us to get pictures of the facility?
But the company and the philosophy of privatization has powerful supporters in America.
This notion that somehow we can't use private security to do law enforcement activities, just not true. Matter of fact, we do that in the United States all the time. If you look at many of our border communities in the United States, they have very, very small police forces. In some cases, you have county police forces. They might have, for the entire county, they might have 1 or 2 police cars on the road during the day with 1 county sheriff in them. They're never going to have the kind of workforce to really do that community policing. So the question is how can you kind of ramp up community policing very quickly? Private sector assets is one way to help do that.
That kind of thinking has been a hallmark of the Bush years, which have seen the overall market for privatized government services double to $400 billion a year. Most of that growth has been in warfare in Iraq and Afghanistan. But with new government policies opening the border security market, it's no surprise the big contractors are coming home. Kellogg Brown & Root, an offshoot of Halliburton, has been hired to build a huge expansion of immigration processing, detention, and deportation.
KBR has grown to a $14 billion a year business. The war in Iraq is not going to last forever. It's hard to go from being a $3 billion a year industry to being a $14 billion a year industry, right? So you're going out and you're looking for new markets. And that's what these companies are doing.
It's a name that we've heard many times before, Blackwater. Iraqi officials accuse the Blackwater contractors of randomly firing on civilians.
Blackwater is caught as an excessive use of force, and that there was no evidence Blackwater's team had been
Eric Prince, the founder of Blackwater, testified before a House Oversight panel today.
Blackwater, without doubt the most controversial private contractor in Iraq. From its base in North Carolina, what Blackwater claims is the world's largest training facility, it has trained more than 100,000 U.S. law enforcement officers. Now, the company has started to manufacture surveillance blimps, clearly aimed at the border market. And last year, Blackwater announced plans for an 824-acre training facility just 8 miles from the U.S.-Mexico border, in the small community of Potrero, California. That sparked an intense community debate about what firing ranges, tactical driving tracks, and an influx of men with guns would do to a quiet border town.
I think it's good for the community. You know, I personally think it is. People can get jobs. You know, they'll hire people that can meet the criteria. That's one of our deals that we voted for as a planning group. Hire local people first before you go outside. So that's helping the community. That's helping people here.
But what, I mean, you need to make the case for why Blackwater belongs in this community if there are other people in the community saying that it has no place here?
They're just going to house a few people here. And they are not going to be training them all the time. It's a training facility.
Well, 300 a week, Phil. 300 trainees a week is the plan.
When it's at maximum. It could be years for it to be that. But
this is the wrong community for it. This is a small, quiet, rural community. This is not a place to bring 300 guys every week to train in armaments. The privatization of government and the privatization of industry is probably the worst thing that's been happening in the last 30 years around the world. You don't privatize the U.S. military. You don't privatize the Border Patrol. That's absolutely anti-American.
They're not going to hire them to protect their border. That's not the issue. That's making rumors again. That's another rumor you've gotten started. They're not going to do that.
And just days after we filmed this discussion, Blackwater announced that it was dropping its plans to build the training camp. A rare case of citizens turning back the contractor tide. Meanwhile, back in Arizona, Boeing's pilot project is over budget and out of time. The first 100 miles of virtual fence is now expected by 2011, 2 years after Boeing's current contract expires. Private companies are just that, very private.
Sir, you can't record me.
What's the problem with that?
I'll call Border Patrol right now, okay? I'm saying there's no videotaping out here.
Over several weeks, Frontline USA contacted Blackwater, Boeing, General Atomic Systems, DynCorp International, Northrop Grumman, Ericsson, Lockheed Martin, Sensor Technologies and Systems, the Corrections Corporation of America, and the GEO Group. All these companies either declined an interview or didn't respond to our requests. Yet another virtual fence. But this is one that actually works.
We've got to take a quick break, but stick around for more Frontline USA from the U.S.-Mexico border. Coming up, we take a ride with the Vigilante Minutemen, and we pop the bubble on media coverage of the campaign. Welcome back to Frontline USA, coming to you this week from the U.S.-Mexico border. You know, here by the border fence, you're pretty much always on camera. You just never know when someone's watching. Now we shift focus to those people who always know when they're on camera, the good folks in the mainstream media. Here's Richard GIZBERT with this week's election post on how immigration is being covered in this election campaign.
Hello and welcome to the Election Post on Frontline USA. Coverage of the immigration issue is a marketable commodity in the U.S. news media, and the way it's covered has become a big part of the debate.
Do you support or oppose driver's licenses for illegal immigrants?
In an election campaign where the media coverage has been short on substance, there is one issue that U.S. news organizations are clamoring to cover: illegal immigration.
What the candidates spent most of the time talking about was immigration, and the back and forth on that got pretty heated.
It's not a white thing. It's not a Republican thing. It's a Homeland Security thing. A nation without borders is not a nation.
Well, immigrants in the military are fine, but trying to stick illegal aliens in the military, come on, Rick.
The news media, both right-wing and mainstream, can't stop talking about immigration.
Why does it make a lot of sense to give an illegal immigrant a driver's license?
Despite clear evidence that they care more about the issue than voters do. A study by the Washington-based Center for Media and Public Affairs late last year showed that 26% of campaign coverage was about illegal immigration, more than any other issue, and it was the most discussed topic in the candidates' debates, even though polls of the public revealed immigration was fourth on the voters' list of priorities, well behind the Iraq War.
Immigration has still not polled very highly among the electorate, but you have people in the mainstream media who are declaring that immigration is a vital issue to the American electorate. The American people haven't gotten the message yet, but the media are continually trying to flog this dead horse.
I think there has been quite a lot of coverage of immigration, and I think for the most
part, it has been of a restrictionist nature.
A wave of illegal immigration affecting every aspect of American life.
It's been mostly negative media coverage of the immigration issue, and really coverage that has not focused on what we can do about the problem that we have with our immigration broken system.
An example of media myopia on this issue came last year when an illegal immigrant in Virginia, driving drunk and without a license, killed a young woman.
The only reason it's news on the factor is because the driver was an illegal alien.
He doesn't have a right to be in his country. To take this tragedy in Virginia Beach and make it about illegal aliens is a sin. That's a sin.
Rarely do you see a story about immigration that's not specifically about illegal immigration and something sensational that happens with regard to illegal immigration, like gunfire back and forth across the border, human smuggling, drug smuggling. We see those kinds of stories all the time, and that's just because that is so sensational.
And it's not just Fox News. Lou Dobbs is a CNN anchor who focused on business news before making illegal immigration his go-to issue.
Incredibly, our government doesn't know just how many illegal aliens there really are living in this country.
Lou Dobbs at CNN found that by scapegoating and demonizing immigrants, he could score a certain kind of ratings victory. So that really put it on the national agenda. So you have a far-right presence in the media that's pushing this into the political mainstream, really.
The problem for anti-immigration forces in the U.S. media is that they have no candidate to back. Republican hopefuls who harped on the issue have all dropped out of the race, and the party's nominee, John McCain, is much softer on immigration than right-wingers would like.
It's really about safety here, Mr. McCain. Why are we giving free pass to millions of people who broke in here illegally?
We've seen the conservative commentators constantly criticizing McCain for being wrong on the issue of immigration. And they talk about this with such venom that a lot of the commentators have told their true conservative voters to actually go vote for Hillary Clinton instead of voting for McCain.
The U.S. media keep working the immigration story.
Virtually every week we cover a new story exposing the bloody consequences of open borders.
They have a lot of airtime to fill between now and November. And the next time there's a big bust at the border or an illegal immigrant gets caught breaking the law, you can expect more coverage.
And when you cover something that way, you really miss out on any human dimension or human aspect of the story, which has long gone begging in the immigration debate.
We're talking about people with families, with children. So it's a very complex problem, and I think overall the biggest problem with the media is that the coverage is very superficial. It really does not give the public a really good understanding of what the problems are and how complex the immigration issue is overall.
But if you break into my country, you know what? I'm going to take your DNA and I'm going to put you on a plane and I'm going to send you the hell back to your frickin' country.
We'll see you again next week with more on the media and the U.S. vote here on the Election Post.
Immigration. It may be an abstract policy issue for some, but here in the California desert, it's entirely down to earth. Earlier in this show, we met immigration advocates who search these sands for people who have just crossed the border, bringing them food and water and support. But there are others who patrol these borderlands, heavily armed, self-described citizens groups, better known as vigilantes, and often accused of racism and mistreatment of migrants. To get a closer look inside their world, Al Jazeera's Mike Kirsch took a ride with the California Minutemen.
End zone, end zone. This is Cowboy One.
Blasting horns and chewing up the desert terrain nightly on the U.S.-Mexico border in California are convoys of private American citizens called Minutemen, permitted under law to carry guns.
Okay, guys, unlock them and load them up.
And help federal border patrol agents catch people crossing illegally into the U.S. On this, the front line of America's illegal immigration debate.
Just let them know we're in the area.
We ride with Minuteman Bob Rodell, a retired cargo ship sailor, as he tracks 9 people who've reportedly just crossed the border from Mexico.
How do you describe the determination of these people? I mean, I guess if I was in their shoes, in their situation, I'd probably want to do the same thing. I would want to do it within the rule of law.
By morning, a U.S. Border Patrol agent down the road has apprehended Mexican citizen Daniel Lopez, who crossed into the U.S. here overnight. His shoes wrapped in strips of cloth, in a failed effort to hide his footprints on his way to the California border town of San Isidro.
I'm illegal. I just wanted to come to San Isidro for a while, to work and to help my wife. She's dying.
Once the U.S. Border Patrol is finished with them and they're returned here over the fence back in Mexico, it's not uncommon for them to turn right around and attempt another illegal crossing back into the United States.
I've tried 6 times. I was only able to cross once, and was only there 1 month and was deported.
This young man named Manuel in Tijuana is planning another border crossing in a few days. ¿Cuándo vas? When are you going again?
I'm thinking in 4 or 5 days.
En el noche? At night?
Yes, during the day it's harder. Since I was bit by a dog, I can't really run.
¿Qué es este? What's this?
A dog bite. I got it when I was trying to cross.
Those in Tijuana who can't cross by themselves turn to human smugglers like Roberto, who are referred to as polleros, meaning those who help the chickens cross the road.
We refer to the individuals trying to cross illegally as pollos, or chickens. Like hens with their chicks, wherever the hen goes, the chicks go.
Roberto says his clients have paid him as much as $2,500, often their life savings, to help them escape an impoverished life in Mexico, working for as little as $5 a day. Indeed, Southern California has long been a paradise of job opportunities for more than 2 million illegal Latino immigrants. Antonio Galvez of Guatemala says he crossed illegally into the U.S. more than a decade ago. He says he supports his wife and 2 daughters back in Guatemala by doing the back-breaking construction work here many Americans no longer want to do.
They're lazy. They don't want to bend down. They complain about their back. The Mexican will do everything.
They say the border is not that far.
But California Minutemen like Bob Rodell are determined to stop the flow of illegal immigrants coming across the border. Back at the group's border camp, Rodell responds to some critics describing the Minutemen as a racist hate group.
There's no hate here for the people themselves. The hate is what they're doing to our country. This we can't allow it to happen.
Ultimately, the frontline stand California's Minutemen are taking against illegal immigrants has made it more difficult for them to cross into the U.S. for now. For illegal immigrants like Daniel Lopez, America, long admired as the land of the free, is not what it used to be.
That's all the time we have for this edition of Frontline USA, but immigration is such a key issue that we will revisit it in the course of this campaign. Until next time, from the U.S.-Mexico border, so long.